Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're diving headfirst into the high-stakes, sometimes totally chaotic world of clinical trial operations. We're stepping beyond just the protocol to see what operational excellence really looks like down in the trenches. We're talking end-to-end trial execution, site management, and honestly, the kind of rigorous, unglamorous daily discipline that actually keeps a multi-million-dollar trial on track and fully compliant. So I want you to consider this for a second. What truly separates a smooth clinical trial from an absolute five-alarm operational crisis? Because you know as well as I do, in this industry, a single misstep can compromise subject safety, invalidate years of hard-earned data, or even trigger a massive regulatory hold. The stakes literally could not be higher. Ultimately, it all boils down to two very distinct mindsets. On one side, you got reactive cramming. You know the drill. It's that stressful, chaotic scrambling that happens right before a major inspection or when a massive risk suddenly blows up in your face. On the flip side, we have the proactive, always-ready posture. This is the calm, systematic, daily discipline grounded firmly in good clinical practice, or GCP. Because here's the truth. Trials that rely on cramming create these little operational patches, and those patches simply do not survive an inspector's scrutiny. Trials that rely on daily discipline, though, they create resilient patterns. Let's map out our operational journey for today. We're going to cover GCP and startup, hit on recruitment strategies, lock down subject safety, ensure IP integrity, dive into quality management, and we'll wrap up with inspection readiness. Let's get right to it. Starting us off, Section 1, the foundation, GCP and startup. Look, good clinical practice is not just some theoretical concept you read about once. It is the daily operational language for your entire trial. And it gets operationalized right out of the gate, literally in these 6 activation gates. Rigorously enforcing these sequential steps is what prevents months of downstream headache. Take this for example. You have to ensure a site's clinical trial agreement, the CTA, is totally executed before you even think about scheduling a site initiation visit, or SIV. You absolutely cannot let a site screen subjects before that green light memo is signed off. Skipping a gate just because you're feeling the pressure to get that first patient in, that is a guaranteed audit finding waiting to happen. It's all about unbending discipline from day one. Moving right along to Section 2, driving recruitment and retention. So, since recruitment delays are the single most cited operational risk in clinical trials across the board, how do we actually keep from falling behind? Well, we intervene proactively. First off, realistic forecasting is everything. You've got to build in a 10 to 20% sample buffer right from the start, simply because a 30 to 50% screen fail rate is incredibly common. And when things do slow down, you need multi-pronged interventions. You have to diagnose the root cause immediately. Is the protocol too strict? Okay, maybe we need an amendment to relax eligibility criteria. Is it a geographical issue? Then maybe try to activate decentralized networks to reach patients who live outside your traditional site catchment areas. Basically, it's about doing the math, staying hyper-aware, and acting fast. All right, on to Section 3, subject safety and escalation. Let's be clear, managing the subject safety pipeline is the absolute highest priority of any clinical trial, bar none. And the escalation thresholds here are incredibly strict and distinct. An AE, or adverse event, is any untoward medical occurrence, and those are recorded routinely. But an SAE, a serious adverse event, like a hospitalization, that escalates the stakes entirely and triggers a super strict 24-hour reporting clock. And then you have a SUSAR. That's an SAE that is both unexpected and related to the study drug. That is your most urgent category, which requires expedited reporting to the regulators within just 7 to 15 days. The absolutely crucial point to remember here is the number 24. For a site, the unbending limit to report a serious adverse event to the sponsor is exactly 24 hours from the moment of awareness. Not 48 hours. Not, hey, I'll get to it by the end of the week. 24 hours. So what happens if a site coordinator detects an SAE on a Saturday morning and the principal investigator is off on holiday? You do not wait until Monday morning. That 24-hour standard operating procedure is completely non-negotiable. You activate the 24/7 backup contact immediately to assess and report it. The safety pipeline has to work flawlessly, around the clock, no exceptions. Let's pivot to Section 4, investigational product or IP integrity. IP is really the central commodity of the entire trial, right? Mishandling it completely undermines subject safety, trial integrity, and your regulatory standing. So let's look at one of the biggest risks out there. Cold chain temperature excursions. Imagine a shipment gets held up in customs and the temperature logger spikes. You don't just guess if the product is still good, and you certainly don't just automatically trash $80,000 worth of biologics. You follow this exact sequence. Quarantine the product, log the data, contact the sponsor's chemistry, manufacturing, and controls, or CMC team, and most importantly, review the Investigational Medicinal Product Dossier, the IMPD, for stability data. Any decision to accept or reject IP has to be entirely evidence-based, using that specific stability profile. No gut feelings allowed here.
And that level of forensic discipline, it extends all the way to the very end of the trial. The only acceptable regulatory standard for IP is 100% reconciliation. Every single unit received at a site must exactly equal the units dispensed, returned, and destroyed. To pull this off without having a total nightmare at closeout, you need to be running visit-by-visit return checks. Reconciling at every single patient visit makes end-of-trial accountability a simple, routine sign-off rather than a massive crisis.
Moving into Section 5, Risk-Based Quality Management. Risk-based quality management means we're no longer just inspecting everything equally across the board. Instead, we're building dashboard visibility where our monitoring is proportionate to identified risks. To do this, you really have to distinguish between these two key metrics. KPIs, your key performance indicators, are great. They measure past performance, like looking at your recruitment rate versus the target. But KRIs, your key risk indicators, those are your early warming radar. They flag emerging risks, say a sudden, weird spike in deviation rates at one specific site before they turn into audit findings. Honestly, catching an emerging risk early via a KRI can save you months of painful recovery time down the line. And finally, Section 6, the always ready inspection posture. Everything we've talked about culminates in the ultimate test for any clinical operations professional, the regulatory audit. Which brings us to a pretty surprising fact. You'd think the biggest issues would be insanely complex, right? But the single most common audit finding across all regulators is actually the ICF, the Informed Consent Form, version mismatch. It's exactly what it sounds like. A subject is consented on an outdated form after a protocol amendment, usually just because a stressed coordinator grabbed an old printed copy off a desk instead of checking the digital system. It happens all the time. And the frustrating part is, it is entirely preventable. Preventing these kinds of common findings requires that unglamorous, everyday discipline we talked about. How do you prevent ICF mismatches? With a weekly version matrix reconciliation. How do you prevent expired staff CVs or lapsed GCP certificates? By setting up 60-day automated alerts. And you prevent late filing findings by enforcing a strict 5-day filing SOP straight into the Electronic Trial Master File, the ETMF. It's this continuous, steady maintenance that actually keeps a trial compliant. Because look, when an inspector just suddenly shows up at your door, and they often arrive completely unannounced, those first 30 minutes set the tone for the entire audit. You need calm, highly professional choreography. Greet them, verify their credentials, notify sponsor quality assurance immediately, get them set up in a private room, ask for the agenda, and this is absolutely critical, listen to me on this one. Produce only what is requested. Never ever volunteer extra documents. Just be factual, be calm, and be prepared. Which perfectly brings us to this powerful takeaway from our source material. Cramming creates patches that don't survive scrutiny. Daily discipline creates patterns that do. Seriously, if you take only one thing away from this explainer, let it be this. True regulatory compliance, real operational excellence, it's built over months and years of daily practice. It is not built in a panicked, caffeinated week right before an audit. I want to leave you all with one final provocative thought. Take a hard look at your own operations right now. Could your trial master files survive an unannounced 30-minute inspector walkthrough today? If your answer to that isn't a highly confident yes, well then it's probably time to trade in the cramming for that always ready posture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me to explore this critical topic. Keep learning, keep pushing for excellence, and I will see you in the next explainer.